Good evening. It is time for our online Sunday school class. I know that it's later than I usually have it, but I was gone today in a wonderful meeting I got to attend and appreciate that. Got to hear one of my best friends preach the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ, and it was at the Oklahoma Native Women's Conference down in Durant, Oklahoma. Enjoyed being there, but we're here to do the Sunday school lesson, and we're probably a little shorter than we usually have since it is late, quite late. The title of our lesson is Joseph Reunited with His Brothers. This is lesson 6 for October 8th, 2023. It seemed like the month here, it's going so rapidly. All right, anyway, our study text is going to be Genesis 44:1 through Genesis 45:28. Central truth: God desires for families and the family of God to be unified around His Word. The title of our lesson, if I forgot to say that, is Joseph Reunited with His Brothers. 2 Corinthians 13:11, as finally, brethren, farewell. Be perfect, be of good comfort, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall be with you. There again, 2 Corinthians 13:11. Our central truth: God desires for families and the family of God to be unified around His Word. Our learning objectives is that we will note that what the story of Joseph's reconciliation with his brothers can teach us about reconciliation with others today. Secondly, we will identify ways in which Joseph's story affirms that God works out His promises even through flawed human beings. And we definitely appreciate that. Vern Hand, glad to see you on. All right. And then we will pray that God will bring restoration and unity to members of the body of Christ. Joseph reunited with his brothers is a lesson that's really, it's a very compelling story. You can't get away from it. All of us have been maybe done wrong, but the thing of it is, I don't know anyone that I've known personally that have gone through what Joseph went through. Absolutely, so totally uncalled for. But how God turned it completely around and benefited so many people. In fact, it was actually other countries were benefited as well as his own family. They didn't have any idea that Joseph was anywhere around. In fact, they had thought they'd sold him into Egypt and he was gone, and they didn't have to worry about him. They're done with that deal. But the father was grieved beyond words. This was the son of his wife that had not been able to have children, and finally was granted that privilege to have children. And so now there was Joseph, and then Benjamin was born. They hated Joseph, literally hated Joseph. His brothers set out to get rid of him, and as it turned out, now they're going to be facing all of this again. So the desire for revenge is a common human impulse, and there's probably no one that hasn't faced something that was a temptation to do that. And it mentions here in our lesson that our writer brings out, in an increasingly rude culture, the temptation can seem overwhelming at times. You do see people do this, just go on and on to try to get back at somebody, and they're consumed with it. And literally, it seems like when a person is consumed with revenge, did you know literally if that person is in their plate, that and if they go to eat, and if Kelly, good to see you on tonight, it seems like nowhere they go can they get away from it, because if revenge gets a hold of you, it's just everywhere you go, whatever you see, you do, whatever, it's that person is what you're thinking, getting back. But here was this person, not Benjamin, but Joseph. He was given to forgiveness, and we know that he was a type of Christ. So to see the example that he set, it's really amazing, and it should help us in our relationships. And every one of us has been hurt at some time. We've had some dishonesty to deal with. Somebody's been dishonest with us, and we have to all face the fact that we've all have been tempted to hold a grudge. And probably I don't believe there's probably a human being alive, if of any age, that has, but what they've had to deal with that, holding a grudge. And some it's harder than others. But here was this man Joseph. Through all what he went through, it says, yet he chose instead to repay evil with good, restoring family relationships that seemed hopelessly broken and propelling forward the journey of the Jews, God's chosen people, toward His precious promises. What a great example Joseph is. It's a tremendous story as you read this. And now our writer we're just hitting actually the high spots on this, but to go and read the whole story, and that's what he brings out in here, that you would need to go back and read chapters 42, 43, 44. Read. It's just amazing, the story, the full impact of it. When you read it, it's just horrifying. In fact, if you did sit down and read it in one sitting, it just gets hold of you at how he could forgive them. It was just amazing, but he did. Thank the Lord that he did. Part one is Joseph tests his brothers. He recognized them, but they didn't recognize him. And he didn't, as it turned out, he used an interpreter, so they didn't have any idea. And the way he was dressed, he looked totally different. They hadn't seen him in years and years. It was amazing how that the Lord is using this man when they don't have any clue whatsoever that it is their brother. They thought he was completely gone forever and he'd broken the dad's heart, but they had shown no grief about it. It was just goodbye, good riddance to bad rubbish. It's almost the way they looked at it. Now, a lot has happened since we last saw Joseph in Genesis 41. The famine had reached Joseph's family and compelling them to go to Egypt for food. Joseph had said he recognized his brothers. They didn't recognize him. But he said to them, when they had no idea that he knew who they were, he knew exactly, and he was just so overwhelmed. He thought about his youngest brother. Well, he was asking about the family, asking about them. And he just kept, and he was talking very roughly and just gruff to them. They were just absolutely horrified. Because here was this man, he was second in command. He could have ordered their deaths, and they were just grief-stricken. And it's something how that, but finally, when there was going to be a reconciliation, but right now it hadn't happened, and he was dealing with them, talking very rough to them. And so, but there's a time that it's going to change. The next time they saw him, it was going to change. But here he is now, and he's accusing them of being spies. You're just spies. You know? And they were absolutely, no, we're not spies. Yeah, you're just spies. And on and on. He said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. And he said, when he kept asking about the family, and finally they was telling him that, yes, they had a younger brother. So he said to them that they could not come back for more food until that brother, until your brother you're talking about, until you bring him back. And he said, I'm going to have Simeon here, your brother. I'm keeping him, and he's going to be like a hostage. And he said, and then that'll make sure you get your brother back. They were horrified. No, he wouldn't change his mind. He said, what was he being cruel just because he could? No, he was testing them to see how do they treat Benjamin? How are things going really? It mentions here, our writer says the seeds of reconciliation were being planted. That's what he was doing. So he said, you can't return. You can't unless you have your brother with you. You don't need to come back, and your brother is going to stay right here. I said this brother right here, Simeon, is going to stay here. Well, when they got back also they found out when they went to open their feed sacks that the food and stuff they had, they looked and their money was all put back. It was horrifying. They said, we gave our money to them, and now here's our money back. They didn't know what in the world. They thought he's accusing us of being spies, and now here's our money put back. How did it get there? We didn't get there. They were having to face some horrible situations here, all of a sudden, agonizing beyond words. This man could have their lives taken just like this. They had no idea who he really was. He was checking things out. But anyway, when all said and done, they recognized, they said, what we're going to do, we're going to have to, we got to get this back. We got to get this money back. But they went on back home. They went on home, took the food and all. But he left a cup in there. They said the cup was used to predict the future. Now we know that Joseph didn't actually believe in that kind of thing. This is what he was saying to them, just using this thing. The brothers were shocked that such, this cup, that how did it get there? Their horror, the cup, was when they actually did get Benjamin back, did bring, when they went, the man was wanting to come, when they'd gone back with the food and all, and they said, we've got this money has been found and we've got to get it back. And now when all the food was gone, and the dad said, you need to go back. And the man said, we can't come back and get food unless we have Benjamin. He said, why did you tell him about him? So they went through all of what they had gone through, and said he kept asking details about the family and all. We didn't have a choice. Well, it was quite a horrible thing when he said finally he agreed to go. He agreed to let the boy go. Carol, oh, you're up late tonight. Good to have you on. We hadn't been going very long here, so you're getting in on most of this. But anyway, when they had checked things out, they got food. They've got food again. When they finally got back, they got food again. And here was Simeon, and they said, okay, and they were going to leave. They were going to go back, but what had happened, they didn't know that Joseph had said, I want you to put my cup in there, in Benjamin's bag, and that one told him exactly what to do. Well, then, as they went back, they went to feed their animals, and they opened their sack. Well, the guard had come. Here come the man that worked, one of the top men had come of Joseph's, and looked and said, there's somebody has taken our master's cup, has taken Joseph's cup. And they were, well, we didn't do that. No, and he said, well, we've got to check all of these. And so he said, well, we'll just all come. No, we only want one person. It's going to be one's going to come back. Whoever we find it with, that's who is going to go back. Well, they began to open their sacks, and it got down to what? The last one was Benjamin, and there was that cup. They were horrified. And instead of being angry, and see, that's what Joseph was doing, was testing them. How are they going to treat Benjamin? Are they going to treat Benjamin like they did me? It was not that way. And they were saying, we'll all come back. We will be your servants. I said, oh, no. It's just the one with which this is found. So here now, these brothers are having come face to face with the consequences of their injustice. They received, our writer says, a terrifying reminder of the pain of their own injustice has caused. But this time they responded totally differently. And this was something that, and I'm sure that Joseph had said to this man, it had to be a very trusted servant that he had sent to do all of this ordeal, to try these brothers. And he said, he probably was saying, I want to know what was, I need to know their attitude. I need to know everything, how they treat. They were totally changed. There was no way that they were just blaming him. Oh yeah, just send him back. Oh no, they were just, they were grief-stricken. And it was Judah as the one that had said, go ahead and sell him. He didn't have any use for him. Now it's Judah, they can tell is the leader here, but he's totally different now. Here he is, that Judah had clearly emerged as the leader, and there was such humility. And as they all fell on their faces, and they said, we'll be all your servants. No, Joseph did not take any part in any kind of divination, though this cup talked about that. It's clear that Joseph, this was just something that he did, because you can tell later he put his trust and faith in God. But this was just something that he said just to get their attention. I think what really it was doing, and to bring more fear on them, not for meanness' sake, but to see just how when they were under pressure, what were they going to do? I'm telling you what, those fellows were they were absolutely heartbroken, and how that Judah was saying, I promised my dad, he didn't want to let us bring Benjamin, but we told him that we had to bring him, or you said that when no use to come, we couldn't get any food. And now he's released him and said, I promised him, that I would be responsible for him. This man has totally changed. It was something how they had changed, and they were now not unkind at all, and they were so concerned for their dad, where before it hadn't really been a big deal about their dad. Rowena, glad to see you on tonight. And it was just before, it was just so dad's going to be disturbed, he's going to cry a while, but it'll be over with. They didn't really have that much concern. And now they're pleading. He said, oh no, he's talking about, we can't do this. To leave Benjamin behind would cause terrible grief, and we just can't do this. Where before, like I said, he had no concern. His chief concern was for the dad. Truly, they had changed. That was evident. They were not the same. They were not the same. How were they going to treat Benjamin? Because Benjamin and Joseph had the same mother. But totally different. Praise the Lord. So part 2 of our lesson is Joseph reveals his identity to his brothers when they had all come back. And it was God who sent me here. Is what he finally told them before it was all over with. And mentions here that as Christians, we know what that God calls us to show mercy. And he's not just saying that to say it. He shows mercy. Thank the Lord that he does. I'm thankful for the patience of God and the mercy of God. You think about it. Oh my, how we need him, and so thankful that he forgives us and helps us. The thing of it is, we want to change like these fellows have changed. Words can be hard to put into action. Joseph shows us the key to mercy and forgiveness. He wrestled with this. I believe that he no doubt wrestled with this. He was a human, just like Jesus walked this earth as a human. But you know what? He set the example. He leaned completely on the Father and did the right thing. And now we have Joseph here is the type of Christ, and this is such a great example that he sets. Well, as Genesis 45 describes this climactic moment when all the events of chapters 42 through 44, they're all coming together to reveal something amazing. Years of grief, years of suffering, grief, and injustice are resolved, and God's marvelous plan emerges unscathed. Well, our writer, he summed that up very, very well. After Judah's speech, Joseph just couldn't restrain himself any longer. He just couldn't restrain himself any longer. And so he ordered everyone except his brothers out of the room. And then he began to weep uncontrollably. Probably they were shocked. What is wrong? Here was this famous man, and here he is, the second in command of all of Egypt. And he's been so angry before. Now here, he's treated us so angrily because he thought we were spies and we had, we'd stolen or the money and all these things. And now here he was weeping, and he ordered everyone out, and he said, "I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive?" The brothers were totally shocked. Now he didn't have an interpreter there. He'd sent everybody out. Now he's speaking in their native tongue. And the horror, the shock, because it was shock waves went through every one of them, and they thought what they had done. He had the power to immediately just order them killed right then and there. He didn't do that. And our writer says he was in such disbelief that they needed a chance to look closely at him before they would really believe this. Joseph mentions that they had sold him into slavery, but then he says, "Don't be angry with yourselves." And he recognized it is him. It is him. I cannot even, you just think about that. The horror, the shock, the impact of that was enough to it almost made them just faint. But here he is telling that he had no hard feelings. He said, "Don't be angry with yourselves." Any bad feelings that had come about because of what they'd done, Joseph said, "I have forgiven. I do not hold it against you." And his forgiveness is amazing. As he said, he had been wrong. Yes, he had been wronged in a cruel way. But he said, "You meant it for evil, but God turned it for good." The scripture we have in Romans, all things work together for good to them that love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. That's what we hold on to, is his purpose. We don't understand it. It may not be right. It may be terribly wrong, but God can turn it. He just, amazingly, he does it. Joseph's forgiveness is amazing. He said in a number of ways. He had been wronged. It was such a cruel thing to separate him from his father. He had done no wrong. He was following everything that his dad wanted to do. The fact that he was given a coat of many colors and treated special, he didn't ask for that. That wasn't something that he asked to be done. But that was what his father had done. But he was blamed for it. But he did not exact revenge. And here he is, the type of Christ. And now he said, "You did it for good, but you did it for evil, but God turned it for good." And because he was willing to go through this, everything he went through, the years he suffered, and he still had this sweet spirit. And he told them, he said, "God turned it for good. Because of this, I'm able to feed you. I'm in position to be able to feed not only there in the Egyptians, but other countries around, just like his brothers had come to get food. And that was going to sustain them. But that wasn't all that was said. And he said, "You can live safely in Goshen. You can all come. The families can come here." What? We're not going to have to remain back in our country. No, you're going to come here. And this is what the Pharaoh, who was over Joseph, was all for that. But it's what Joseph was saying to them. You can live safely in Goshen. You're going to be safe there. And our writer asked the question, have you ever been part of a family reunion? It can be a very joyous time of reconnecting, and it also can be a time of healing of wounds that have occurred over the years. And that is so good when, the years, people can sometimes, they can mellow and realize, I don't know why I'm holding this grudge. This is so crazy. This is wrong. I want to get it right. And at a family reunion, they may do that. Now, on the other hand, there are people that'll say, you have known people, I'm sure, that have said, they didn't ask me to forgive them. So they feel like they can just keep holding a grudge. What is the benefit of holding a grudge? But yet, every one of us have had to deal with that. And it's the thing that we need to do, is take it to the Lord. Lord, I don't want to hold a grudge. I don't want it. It absolutely, it's wrong, but it's difficult. Many times we faced it. We have all faced it. But to come again and again, no matter how many times we have to come and say, Lord, I'm trying to get over this, but it's just more than I can handle. I need you to help me, because you didn't hold grudges. I don't want to hold a grudge. And the Lord is faithful. But now Joseph told him, there are yet 5 years remaining of this famine. Yet 5 years. But you're going to be okay, because you're going to come here. And so it was just marvelous what God had done. But he said, you know, if you don't come here, you're going to die. So I mean, it was. Can you imagine what it was like at this? Well, it says here they all talked about how they all wept together, and the hurts of the past feelings. You know, they were healed, and they were freely talking. Said before they didn't know he was so angry at them and was treating him so badly and making these accusations. Was he doing that because he could? No, he was checking them out to see if they really changed. But now I tell you, Joseph had been the object of their scorn, and now they realized that they could have a close relationship with him because of his love and his forgiveness. It was a marvelous scene. It would have been something to have seen that. Just amazing what God had done, and they're in pure shock, I think. How do you? I'm sure they didn't sleep that night. I don't see how they could have. Just thinking of how the goodness of this brother that they had done so wrong, and now they were all going to be. They were going to go get the dad, and so the Pharaoh said, "Well, you need to take wagons of stuff, just so bring everything back. We bring all your possessions. So I'll come here." So in part 3 of our lesson, Jacob's family saved and restored. The best of Egypt is yours, is what Pharaoh said. The best of Egypt is yours. And have you ever found that sometimes God gives us blessing beyond what we ask for? Our writer asked that question. Joseph and his family found unexpected blessings. They never dreamed. It was beyond, those brothers, they weren't like this until now because of the example of their brother. I really believe it got him, they saw the blessing of and the benefit and the happiness and just the joy and the true this true forgiveness that their brother had. No ill feelings at all. No, and it wasn't a matter of just wait till I get you a loan. I'll take care of you. No, it wasn't any of that. And I like here our writer brings out that Joseph's story might best be described in a single word: providence. It was the providence of God. God's purposes are fulfilled through or even in spite of human action. Things that looked impossible, that anything good could come of things just like this. But it mentions with every human failure or shortcoming, God makes a way for the final outcome to be good. So Joseph, when he had let Pharaoh know about his family and all, well, Pharaoh, he was so excited for them to come. So God had made a way. He'd given them favor with this pagan. This Pharaoh was the Pharaoh there. He was a pagan, but the Lord had given favor, and just it was amazing. He even went beyond Joseph's invitation. He called him. Joseph called them to come to Goshen so he could be near them. But Pharaoh added that they should come so they could eat the fat of the land. There's more to it than that. He said, hey, listen, you're just going to have the fat of the land here. And here was this horrible famine, and yet Joseph's family would enjoy the best of the food, all of the furnishings they had there. The best of Egypt would be theirs. Even though they had done wrong. Well, maybe people would probably think, well, they should get just a little bit. They should just barely just get a few rations. No, this forgiveness and this love and kindness, it was complete. So Joseph that's the way he felt, and Pharaoh agreed with it. And he even did more than what Joseph did, what he felt like he should do. And when Pharaoh said, oh, it's going to be better than that. They can have the best of the land. But you know what happened when Joseph was giving out gifts to his brothers? He gave out extra gifts to Benjamin. And he noticed that his brothers, they weren't angry about it, where before they hated Joseph because he was given more. Well, this was Joseph's own brother. These others were half brothers, but this is his brother. They had the same mother and dad. So here it is, just the change that has taken place in this family is just amazing what God has done for them. Jacob, even though Benjamin received the extra food from Pharaoh's second in command, in in Genesis 43:34, they were still willing to be enslaved by him. They were whatever they wanted. If they needed to be slaves or what, they would do anything. But no, they weren't going to be here as slaves. They're going to be free people. They're going to be enjoying the best of the land. They no longer had all these personal grievances or anything like that. As they prepared to depart, Joseph had one last word of instruction. They were going back, all these wagons that they were taking back, going to bring everything back, plus they had all the food supplies. And this is something I had never noticed this before. Many times I've read the Bible through. This never really captured my attention until it said Joseph's parting word was, don't quarrel about all this along the way. I'm going to read that. I think it's here in the, let me see if they have it in, yes. So in the King James Version, he said, now as they were leaving, and he said to his brothers, he called to them, and he sent his brethren away, and they departed. He said to them, see that you fall not out by the way. In the New Living Translation that reads, so Joseph sent his brothers off, and as they left, he called after them, don't quarrel about all this along the way. So they think what he was referring to about all that had happened, and your fault, his fault, my fault. And he said, I don't get involved in anything like that. I don't want that. Just let it go, because God has turned this for good. I'm here in spite of what has happened. Just leave it in God's hands. God has worked this thing out. I love this, how and it mentioned here, most scholars today see this as an instruction not to dispute with one another about the past, specifically to make accusations over what they did to Joseph. Their brother had forgiven them. Now they needed to forgive one another and just move on. That's what he was saying, just move on. It's important to see the value of making the effort and trusting in God to get along, to have forgiveness. Now, there are some people you may forgive, and you may ask, if you feel like you've wronged, you may ask forgiveness, and they will not. They just will. And every single word that you say, you've dealt with people like this, every single word you say, and no, you said if, or you said it, and you know that you did wrong. No matter what you say, it's almost like a no-win. The thing of it is, we do everything that we can do, and we leave the rest with the Lord. And there as we said, all things work together for good to them that love the Lord, who are the called according to his purpose. Mary, good to see you on. I just see your name pop up there. All right, that's all the names I see right now. Okay, now. But see, Dad hasn't seen the son yet. He doesn't know. Jacob doesn't know. And our writer asked this question: have you ever received good news that absolutely shocked you? We all have. But anything like this? Said, as a feeble old man nearing the end of his life, Jacob had this wonderful experience. Can you, in return to Jacob in Genesis, the return to Jacob in Genesis 45:25 stands in stark contrast from the last two times Scripture recorded his sons returning to him. It had been a very sorrowful thing. It had been grief. But now, here, he can exclaim, Joseph, my son, is yet alive. Because he looked and they said, Joseph is alive. Joseph, and they saw all of the wagons out there, and they saw all of the supplies and these wagons for everybody. We get to take all our things, put them in there. We're going back. We're going to live there. We're going to have the best of the land. Joseph is now, he's the number 2 in command, Pharaoh's the only one over him. And they begin, no telling how just poured out of them. And how, now whether they went ahead and told the whole story of what had happened, what they had done, I don't know about all of that, but I know this. He said, my Joseph, my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. It's in verse 28. I will go, because he knew he was at the close of his life. Not only was Joseph alive, he had prospered beyond all imagination. Joseph could hardly believe. He almost fainted when he saw. I believe this. He almost fainted when he saw. It was so shocking. It is shocking to humans. It's not the what all had happened. This was not the common thing. This was God's family. This was God's family of promise. He had preserved them by his hand despite so many challenges. Nothing could and nothing can thwart God's plan to bless the nations. God is going to do what he said he was going to do. And when we are in awkward situations, sometimes we don't know which way, what to do and all. I think we just hold steady. Brooklyn, glad to see you. You're up really late. My. Oh, yeah. it's getting pretty late. We'll hurry up here and be done so I can get this. I do like to go ahead and download these to upload to YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter, which is now called X. But anyway, what is God saying to us concerning this lesson? Nothing can stand in the way of God's plan to bring salvation to the nations. This is great encouragement to us when we feel that we have fallen short of God's plan for us. Remember, He is still working in us and in the world. That's what I like, what our writer has said. So He's still working in us and in the world. Not just the world, but in us. Nothing can stand in the way of God's plan to bring salvation to the nations. The word is going out, though many are speaking all kinds of evil things. God's word still is going out. So living it out, talking about ministry in action. So number one, seek out someone you have wronged, and inasmuch as you are able, reconcile with them. Number two, make an effort to tell the significant people in your life, be they family or friends, why they are important to you. I think that's really a good thing. Pray for unity in the family of God, that we may demonstrate to the world that we are one in Christ. Okay, now usually at the beginning of the lesson, I usually say that my name is Karen Clymer. I forgot that, but that is what my name is. And we are our church is located at 921 3rd Street in Elgin, Oklahoma. And I failed to mention at the first of the class is that we have all Sunday school classes for all ages beginning at 9:45. So whether they're young or old or in between and all, there's classes for all ages. And then at 10:45, our pastor, Reverend Larry Toma, will be preaching. Always has a good message. So you are invited. That's 921 3rd Street in Elgin, Oklahoma. So it's been good to be with you, and we'll close out, and you have a great evening. I hope you sleep well. We were out of town today, had the privilege of attending the meeting that I'd mentioned earlier, and hear our dear friend preach, and then another lady didn't get there in time to hear the first one, but it was a great day, and I really, really appreciate the word of the Lord, and being reunited with a friend I hadn't seen in I think about 6 years, and she's since lost her husband. In fact, 7 months ago today, she lost her husband. But a privilege to hear her, Patty Posey, to hear her preach the glorious gospel and hear her sing, a wonderful woman of God. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and we're so happy to see all of you on tonight. You be blessed, and we'll see you next time, the Lord willing, next Sunday or late Saturday night. Goodbye.